Well, good Thursday morning, Earthmaster here checking in. Just going to do a quick early morning update video. September 21st, 2017, 6:47 a.m. here on the West Coast, and all's looking pretty quiet at the moment. A couple small earthquakes in the vicinity of southeastern Idaho, where the past earthquake activity has occurred, and looks like it may be picking up a little bit today. Just another sign of continued pressure out here on the west coast, ultimately affecting the Intermountain region as well, in this case southeastern Idaho region, but fairly quiet on most of the seismographs this morning. That hasn't been the case over the last 24 hours though, as we've seen a number of large earthquakes out there along the Pacific Ring of Fire. Quite a few sixes and many fives out there as well. Mostly out here on the western Pacific Plate, or the western portion of the Pacific Plate, that is. Quite a few sixes right there, and some deep earthquakes as well. You got a 5.7 a little bit further west over here in this region, but nonetheless ultimately a large scale movement on the Pacific Plate, which runs all the way up through the Alaska region, down through the west coast, and ultimately down here through Mexico region, where we've seen the 7.1 earthquake in Mexico City, and also numerous deaths, fatalities due to that earthquake there. I'm pretty sure last time I checked, we're looking at a couple hundred people there that unfortunately lost their lives due to the earthquake out there. So that leads me to believe that with all this activity and the regions where it's at, it's very possible that we could be looking at something along the west coast. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but just the absence of any higher magnitude earthquake is what's worrying me. Because we are continuing to see the buildup of pressure over here along the west coast. First, let me start you off on this map right here. Still continuing to see the pressure being applied. There was a couple small earthquakes in California, 3.2 down there, San Juan Bautista area, and also a couple earthquakes up here north of Redding, near Mount Shasta, which is up here a little bit. Pretty dominant geological feature out here in Northern California is Mount Shasta. I can actually see it from my city, and it's quite a ways away. But 3.7 near Bernie, and then followed up by a 2.1. If you look at the depth of these earthquakes here, we're looking at 10 miles below the surface right there. That's for the main event. 2.1 right here, a little bit more shallower, 9.9. Other than that, not a whole lot of activity on the west coast, but there is definitely noticeable pressure being applied there. There's a 2.8, almost a 3 near Rio Dell in northwestern California, this little blue dot here off the northern California coastline. I was looking at the slow slip event movements here. The increase in it continues today, with it occurring north of the Seattle region, near Vancouver up here, just west of Vancouver. You can see the numerous small little red dots indicating some slow slip movement being detected by these instruments. Now, this was yesterday. The plot summary ends yesterday. Today's the 21st, so the activity is occurring, but right now we're not able to pick up the data from that activity, just the way this system is set up here. So I guess it's not really real time, but we can get a general idea of where the slow slippy movement is occurring. Basically all up and down the west coast over here, which is a good thing. But you know, that's obviously pressure being applied under the plate, which ultimately could affect other plates in the region. Not to mention the Cascadia subduction zone and the plate structure over here. I'll show you this image right here, what I'm talking about. You got the, you guys can make that out there. Try and zoom it in for you a little bit. You got the Pacific Plate, which is this yellow-orangish color right here, extending down through Japan and in this general region right here, stretching up through the west coast. But you also have that plate of its own called the Juan de Fuca Plate. Now that's a totally different plate associated with the Pacific Plate and ultimately being affected by the Pacific Plate, which has a lot to do with Cascadia subduction zone there. This is just an area to watch because ultimately this plate is being pressurized, I guess the word that I can use, due to the increased movement along the Pacific Plate into the west coast over here. So definitely going to be watching this region right here for any type of movement. I mean, it's been quiet. You know, looking at the past few days of, well, let's take it down a little bit here. Let's go to about 5.1. There's really hasn't been any large-scale movement along the west coast or even up in Alaska for that region. They did have a 5.1 a little bit ago, but nothing major aside from the 7.1 down there in Mexico, but fairly quiet in this zone right here in Northern California, the west coast region. The rest of the plate showing lots of activity and some large-scale movement. So question is now, are we going to see, you know, release of pressure within this region? There's a little site over here I was checking out, reading this morning right here. Maybe send the link here in the description box below. But they're asking here, why is there a Pacific Ring of Fire and not an Atlantic or Indian Ring of Fire? Of course, it's got to do with the ultimately the plate boundaries and whatnot. I'll let you guys read that if you want to there. But it's pretty interesting. You can check out the actual geological features of the plates themselves right there. You can see the plate fractures within the ocean floor down there, extending up here through the west coast. And of course, that's why we have all the volcanoes over here in California. The active ones, Shasta, Lassen, Mount Hood, and many other dormant volcanoes over the past millions of years along the west coast here. It's pretty cool to look at. The whole plate function is actually a really interesting subject to talk about. I think that's why I like earthquakes. It's just I don't know. It's interesting. A lot of people like football and soccer and, oh, I don't know, hockey, wrestling. But weather and earthquakes, that's kind of my thing. I like that stuff. Here's a cool little picture showing you the layout of the Earth. You got the Asthenosphere down here in the mantle, melted part of the Earth. So a lot of times when you see earthquakes, there's ridges right there and trenches, subducting zones. But a lot of times when you see earthquakes way down here in the Asthenosphere, we start to see some large-scale movement along the whole plate. I think that's what we're going to start seeing, or we have been seeing, with the Pacific Plate. You got a couple deep earthquakes right here in the 6 range in the southeastern or southwestern corner of the Pacific Plate. But then once again, California, Washington, Oregon region, just quiet. You know, why is that? What is going on there? Is it continuing to build up pressure to where we could see a large scale earthquake. It's very possible. So it's just something to think about. You know, I'm like I say, I'm looking at these seismographs here, and it's looking quiet for right now. But as always, and in most cases, that's what we see before, well, a good-sized earthquake. I guess we'll just have to see how the day goes. I know the world's supposedly going to end on the 23rd, which is in 2 days. So I decided to not pay any of my bills and just live happily the rest of my 2 days of my life here. So I'm being sarcastic, by the way. More than likely, that's not going to happen. It's crazy because I was watching all these Facebook people talk about the end of the world, and the majority of people don't believe stuff like that. It's just a lot of fear-mongering, supposedly by this numerologist, Christian numerologist, who claims that the stars are lining up and the sky is going to start falling due to Planet X. And if you listen to him and don't think logically, there's a good chance you're going to get fooled. So, you know, just think logically, think of facts and science, and then you can put it together. Other than that, I'm not going to waste too much of my time on here talking about that event. This is 2.5 and above, last 7 days. See the outline of the Pacific Ring of Fire, the Pacific Plate over here. Just a period of absenceness up here along the San Juan de Fuca Plate, and of course Northern California, Oregon, Washington region there. Some small earthquakes there, as typical in California with all the plate fractures and structure that's there. You're going to see some small earthquakes occurring, but no large-scale movement north of there. And it's just, I don't know. Something puzzles me about this whole picture right here. I was looking at the Yellowstone layout this morning, and a couple small earthquakes, not in Yellowstone itself, but over there in southeast Idaho, where the earthquake activity has been occurring over the past few weeks. Still, excuse me, my voice cracked there. Still a little bit of activity with this earthquake, with the Yellowstone earthquake swarm occurring. You can see all these little blue spikes once again. Looks like it may be increasing a little bit compared to the past couple days, where we've seen a period of quietness. I lost the data on this section, but nonetheless you can still see some small activity occurring. Ultimately from the June 12th Yellowstone earthquake swarm when it began, and it's now, well, September 21st. So do the math there. A lot of time there, a lot of buildup of pressure, and yeah, a lot of earthquake activity occurring there. You see that small, I think it was a 3.2 there that occurred there in southeastern Idaho. But yeah, this is a pretty cool little earthquake description of the plate boundaries and the plates themselves, and subduction zones where the plate boundaries meet and slide underneath each other. Pretty cool. If you don't know too much about this, I would definitely recommend reading this. Even if you do, it's kind of cool just to read over and check it out this morning if you have some extra time. Shows you a little article about the Atlantic region over here as well, along the East Coast, which we haven't seen too much activity at all in the past either. You can see this region right here on the earthquake 3D map. Also another fracture over here. But the dominant active feature right now is no doubt the Pacific Plate. In the absence of earthquakes over here on the west coast. Juan de Fuca. If you ever go to Google Earth and check out the satellite view, you can actually see a really good viewing of the plate itself and the fractures. Of course, that's also seen here on this map. Let's see where it's at here. I think I showed you guys this or this feature already. But this is just more or less like a well, not a drawing, but illustration. But if you go to Google Earth, you can actually see that the whole plate feature up here off the northern California coast, how it fractures and does some pretty cool 90-degree angles. See if you can see it on this one. Not really. More higher detail in Google Earth if you were to check it out. But fractures occurring right up here. So that's the one to watch. I'm thinking we'll see how it goes throughout the next couple days. And of course, I'm over here in California, Northern California, and it's just been pretty quiet as far as earthquake activity goes. Rest of the globe still got your couple 5s and whatnot over there in the, let's see here, 5.2. That's a little older earthquake. I don't remember seeing this one on here. I'll check that out while I'm discussing earthquakes. I was in China quite a few days ago there. So anyway, yeah, I'm just enjoying the nice cool morning here in California. Lows actually down into the 40s overnight. Quite impressive and a nice change from the 100-degree temperatures that we've experienced all summer long. Looking at highs in the 70s today, so I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm ready for winter, and I'm so over summertime. It's just not even funny. So anyway, guys, if you have any questions or comments, you can comment below. I'm just general chit-chatting on here. You know, like I say, I'm not issuing any kind of warning. It's more or less like a watch. You know, with all this, there's differences in watches and warnings. You know, if the Weather Service puts out a watch, they're basically saying that conditions are favorable for something to happen. You know, tornado, lightning, hail. In this case, conditions are favorable in these quiet zones here along the California coast and west coast over here for earthquakes. Now, warning is indicative of imminent weather or imminent, did I say that right? Earthquakes. We don't know 100% sure that an earthquake is going to strike out here on the west coast. It's not we can't issue a warning, but a watch is a good word. Just with all the activity along the eastern or western Pacific part of the plate, and lack of, well, any kind of release of pressure in the west coast region. I mean, obviously we're seeing pressure applied with the earthquakes that are occurring in Idaho, in Northern California, some small ones, but nothing big being released. That's what's troublesome. all is quiet on board, folks. Hope you guys have a good Thursday. If you see me put out another video, that means there's obviously been another good-sized earthquake. I'm trying to keep the video updates going. I know the live stream is offline for now until I can refocus on the stream itself. Right now, the federal government and my kids are dependent on me, working and paying taxes and making money and putting food on the table, and that's what I gotta do. Unfortunately, it's taken up 99% of my time. So once that calms down, which I have a feeling it will pretty soon, then I will refocus on the stream and bring the stream up and go back live once again. Unless something happens, say we see some large-scale earthquakes on the west coast, and I will just automatically go live due to the the highly popular nature of the earthquakes along the west coast there. I would definitely go live and keep it up until conditions calm down. Or if we start seeing an increase in the earthquake activity in Yellowstone National Park, or even Idaho for that matter, I'll go live once again too. But I know we're seeing activity right now along the Pacific Plate, but like I said, there's no guarantee we're going to see an earthquake out here on the west coast. It's just something to watch for. But if something does happen, guys, I'll go live again and try to refocus on that. But for now, gotta just put out update videos and focus on what I need to do. Alright guys, have a good day. I'm going to try and get some stuff done before before I have to go to work again. So, take care guys.